you say, hey, why would you want to work in a culture that doesn't appreciate who you are, that doesn't appreciate what you've done, who doesn't lift you up at all? Imagine where you went to a different culture that allowed you to be you, that appreciated everything you brought to the table. Think about how much more you're going to do for them. So if we switch the way that we think about it and we talk about knowing our audience, what gets them, then they can start to understand how something as simple as an act of human kindness could increase revenue and profit. And so that's why I like to switch the idea, because it's the audience that I'm speaking to, in a sense that I have to explain why empathy, kindness, and being your whole self matters. Whatever that relationship of you getting that philosophy, I'll spin that, because now you see it from a profit level, but you're still acting in the way that we want to act in humanity through kindness.
So I like that. And I think what you're saying in some ways is it's okay if they don't actually believe in empathy or kindness off the bat, because there's a belief that the best path forward for us from a business perspective, profit perspective, as well as humanity perspective, is empathy and kindness. So if we just get people doing it, it'll start the flywheel and it'll go, which again, I hope very much is true. Where my mind goes is, because you get the spirit of the show a little bit, we spoke a little bit before, like I love kind of questioning and pressure testing to try and get to like the first principle root of it. So where my mind goes with that is, why didn't we end up there? Like, if you believe in a view from a very societal level of like the best ideas win, kind of survival of the fittest in terms of ideas, why has it taken us this long to get to empathy and kindness? Because if that truly is the better business approach, even, why did we go this route over the last 50, 100, you can argue 500 years of human nature and humankind, where we didn't focus on that? It was about more of control and working towards this end and pushing everybody to not be their whole selves. Somebody can make an argument that says, historically, like if the better idea was empathy and kindness, that would have won out already. Have you thought about that? Like, what's the reason you think it's taken us so long to get here?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with society itself and the culture it created for us, and the dynamics in which we have experienced for generation after generation after generation, being taught to go to work, make money, divided by politics, divided by church. And all of those things that are very powerful started to lose power over these last few years. So therefore, there's openings, there's cracks for some of these other philosophies to penetrate.
And even just as you're going, why do you think those institutions, it's a big question, it's a philosophical question, but why did they get power to begin with? Because much in the vein of what we're talking about, if empathy and kindness were the right way, which again, I believe and hope they are, why did we allow them to get so much power and allow that to strip away from us? Because that's the fear. The fear is that human nature is such that empathy and kindness don't win. Those institutions you spoke of that took power and forced us away from that won for a reason, because they tapped into an aspect of human nature which says, none of us hopefully aren't proud of it, but the way we're wired is it's about being self-serving. It's about winning. It's about growing. It's about, all those things above all else.
So my thought of that is, if you look at history and you look what we went through in the certain generations, and if you do some research on each generation, you'll see that each generation has a high point and a low point. And it's interesting when you start to think about what each generation dealt with. So we have to only think about the generations before us, because the change is coming with the generations we are in now and coming up. So we were more empowered to think about work ethics, working in general, business, the idea of the perfect family, marriage, all of these things that were institutionalized in a very specific way. And many of the generations, the generations that created the business model that we have today, were all led by the idea of profit, the idea of those, again, those family values that were in place. These new generations have come in and they're starting to challenge these family values. They don't have the same concern and or interest in finance that we were forced to understand and kind of our parents kind of drove us to think of money, meaning status, and all of these other things. These younger generations are shedding some of those things that we were kind of taught and forced to practice. I'm 58 years old. I'm a gay man. I have 3 children. So think about from 1963 to today, how much I've been able to be accepted in the workforce, how much I've had to change and be accepted as a parent. All of these different things that were fears that were conditioned into my brain, which are conditioned into many people's brain today, have all of a sudden started to be altered. It's been altered because of generation. And so generations today see the value in the world, global needs in itself, sees the need to be more acceptant and tolerant of others and to appreciate what they bring to the table, to think of corporate social responsibility more so. And I think that the generation shift is what's creating this dynamic to happen. We were not taught and conditioned to be comfortable with love and emotions and empathy, especially in the workplace. So large generations left that at the door. It didn't come into the door. Well, now the door's wide open, and you have to deal with the gay community. You have to deal with the Black Lives Matters marches. You have to understand what Juneteenth is, even if you don't live in Texas. And all of this is flooding down on us. And we should have the ability to embrace, learn, and understand. We didn't have those things. We were taught by fear. And so fear is going away. And now it's not fear, it's youth fighting for, for the world, for the idea of saving this great planet for the future. It's children who are fighting these causes now. So it's the generational change that's allowing this to happen, and allowing emotion and allowing empathy and allowing love to actually be a part of business. We didn't have that. We weren't allowed to bring that there.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is it's almost as you're explaining it, to stick kind of with the biological parallel, it's an evolution. In many ways, maybe not quite literally, but there is an evolution where the best idea, quote unquote, is winning. Over time, we're learning, we're evolving, and we're realizing that bringing emotion, bringing empathy, bringing love into our entire human experience is better. And we're seeing that start to play out. The interesting part of that, or maybe the scary part of that, depending on how you look at it, is if you look at it from a very evolutionary perspective, the way evolution works is the things that are better win out and the things that are worse lose out. And I think that's why there's so much conflict and tension in society today, because in a very real sense, there are groups of people who, from an evolutionary perspective, still have that old way of thinking. And those things lose, right? In the way we're explaining it. And now it becomes a value judgment. It becomes that's worse, this is better. Yep. And although many people might agree with that, you can imagine why that's hard for some people to hear, because you're now telling me my way of thinking, my way of life is bad. And that's a tough thing, but maybe a true thing. And is it possible to have this evolution without conflict, without that tension that's there? I don't know.